The noose swung in the wind. 47 people stood in the town square of Silver Falls, watching her die. Clara stopped counting when they tied her hands. She stood on the back of a wagon, hands bound behind her, 7 months of pregnancy, pressing against the front of her dress. The fabric was plain gray wool, nothing fancy, but it was clean. She'd made sure of that this morning before they came for her. If she was going to die, she'd die with dignity. They could take her life, but they couldn't make her ashamed. The rope went around her neck, coarse fiber against skin. Too tight. She couldn't swallow, couldn't breathe right. The baby kicked hard and insistent, like it knew something terrible was happening and wanted to fight back. Clara pressed her bound hands against her belly as much as she could with her wrists tied. One last touch, one last promise she couldn't keep. "I'm sorry, little one, I tried." Frank Jessup stood in front of the wagon. Big man 6 feet tall with shoulders like an ox and a face that had forgotten how to smile sometime around the Mexican War. He owned the largest ranch in the territory, 3,000 acres of prime grazing land that he'd acquired through means Clara now understood all too well. His voice carried across the square loud and certain and completely without mercy. "Clara Ford, you have brought shame upon Silver Falls. You carry a bastard child and refuse to name the father. You have defied the moral order of this community. The penalty for such defiance is banishment." He paused, looked around at the crowd. Or worse. No one spoke. No one moved. Clara looked at the faces one more time. Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught her to read. Tom Bridger, who'd let her ride his horses when she was 10. Sarah Mills, who'd been her best friend until 6 months ago when Clara's belly started to show, and Sarah's mother forbid her from speaking to that woman ever again. Not one of them met her eyes. Clara had known it would come to this. She'd known the moment she told them Elias Reed was the father, the moment she refused to give them the real name, because the real name would destroy her, destroy the baby, destroy whatever small chance remained that this child might have a life worth living. Some secrets were worth dying for. "The father is dead," Clara said. Her voice came out steady, stronger than she felt. "Elias Reed died serving this territory. That's all you need to know." Frank's jaw tightened. "Elias Reed was a liar and a thief. And you're protecting whoever really planted that seed in your belly. Go to hell, Frank." She spit the words at him, saw his face go red, saw his hand clench into a fist. Somewhere in the crowd a woman gasped. You didn't speak to Frank Jessup that way, not if you wanted to keep breathing. But Clara was done being polite, done being small, done pretending that these people deserved her respect when they'd shown her nothing but cruelty for 6 solid months. Frank stepped back, raised his hand. The man holding the horse's reins understood the signal. He raised the switch. Clara closed her eyes. The baby kicked one more time. The switch came down hard across the horse's flank. The animal bolted forward. The wagon lurched wheels, scraping across frozen ground, and suddenly there was nothing beneath Clara's feet but empty air and the certainty of death. She dropped. The rope caught, tightened around her throat like an iron band, crushing her windpipe, cutting off air, cutting off everything. Pain exploded through her neck and spine. Her body convulsed, legs kicking uselessly at nothing, hands straining against the ropes that bound them. The world started to go gray at the edges. Sounds became muffled, distant. The baby stopped kicking. "Please, God, save the baby. I don't matter, but save the baby." The shot rang out like thunder. The rope went slack. Not loose, but slack, the tension suddenly gone. Clara was falling again this time, for real, dropping like a stone toward frozen ground. She hit hard on her side, knocked the wind from her lungs, felt snow and ice against her face, gasping, choking, alive. The baby kicked again, strong, angry, still alive. Hoofbeats pounded across the square, fast getting closer, shouting, confusion. Someone screamed. Clara tried to get up, couldn't. Her hands still bound the rope still around her neck, her pregnant belly making every movement impossible. She rolled onto her back, looked up at the sky. A man on horseback rode straight through the crowd. He was tall in the saddle, dressed in weathered brown leather and furs that marked him as a mountain man. Broad shoulders, strong hands, a face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the Bitterroot Peaks. Dark hair, longer than was fashionable, tied back with a leather cord. A rifle in his hands, smoking from the shot that had severed her rope. He didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. Just rode straight at the platform where Clara lay struggling to breathe, and in one smooth motion scooped her up and across his saddle like she weighed nothing at all. "Anyone follows, I shoot to kill." His voice was low, rough, the kind of voice that didn't make empty threats. He fired another shot into the air. The crowd scattered. Horses screamed. Frank Jessup was shouting orders, but no one was listening. Everyone running for cover, afraid the mountain man would start shooting people instead of rope. They rode, hard and fast through the town, past the church, past the general store, past every building Clara had known her entire life. The man's arm was locked around her waist, holding her against him so she wouldn't fall. She couldn't see his face, could only see the ground racing beneath them, snow flying up from the horse's hooves. The rope was still around her neck. She clawed at it with her bound hands, trying to get it loose, trying to breathe. "Hold still," the man said. "You'll choke yourself worse." They hit the tree line at full gallop. Branches whipped past, catching at Clara's dress or hair. The horse didn't slow. The man guided it through the forest like he knew every tree, every rock, every hidden path. Behind them, the sounds of Silver Falls faded. No pursuit. No one brave enough to follow a mountain man into the woods. 5 miles later, he finally slowed. The horse was breathing hard, sides heaving. Steam rose from its body in the cold air. The man guided it to a stop near a rock outcropping that formed a natural shelter. He dismounted, then reached up and lifted Clara down. Her legs buckled. He caught her before she fell. "Easy now." He pulled a knife from his belt. Clara flinched. He noticed, stopped. "I'm going to cut the rope, that's all. You have my word." She nodded, couldn't speak yet. Her throat too raw, too damaged. He sliced through the bonds at her wrists first, then carefully removed the noose from around her neck. The moment it was gone, Clara collapsed to her knees in the snow, coughing, gasping, hands going to her belly. "The baby. Is the baby?" Movement. Strong kicks against her palm. Thank God. Thank God. She bent forward, forehead nearly touching the ground, just breathing. Just being alive. The man stood a few feet away, giving her space, checking his rifle, scanning the forest behind them. When Clara finally looked up, he was building a fire in the shelter of the rocks. Fast, efficient movements. No wasted motion. The kind of competence that came from years of doing something the same way until it became instinct. The fire caught. Small flames, then bigger ones. Heat. Clara crawled toward it. The man watched her, but didn't help. She appreciated that. She was tired of being handled, being pulled, being moved around like property. She got herself to the fire on her own strength and sat with her back against the rock hands, stretched toward the warmth. Her throat felt like someone had tried to crush it with a hammer. Probably looked worse. She touched the skin gingerly, felt the rope burn the swelling. Would hurt to talk for days, maybe weeks. Worth it. She was alive. The baby was alive. The man sat across the fire from her. In the flickering light, she could see him better. Mid-30s, maybe older. Face weathered from years in the mountains, scars on his hands, on his neck. A man who'd seen violence and dealt it back. But his eyes weren't cruel, just careful. Watching her the way you'd watch a wounded animal not sure if it would run or attack. Clara tried to speak, coughed instead. Her throat refused to cooperate. He held up a hand. "Don't. You need water first." He pulled a canteen from his saddle, brought it to her. She drank. Cold, clean water that hurt going down, but helped. She drank half the canteen before she could manage words. Why, just that one word, but it contained everything. Why save me? Why risk your life? Why ride into a mob of armed men for a stranger? The man studied her for a long moment, then reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn yellowed at the edges, carried for a while. "Read this." He handed it to her. Clara unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was familiar, neat, precise. The handwriting of a surveyor who spent his days measuring land and recording exact details. Elias. Her hand started shaking before she even read the words. The letter was addressed to someone named Jonas, not to her. She'd never seen it before. "Jonas, I know we haven't spoken in 4 years. I know you prefer your mountains to men, but I'm asking anyway. There's a woman, Clara Ford. If you're reading this, I'm dead and she's alone. She'll be carrying my child and this town will eat her alive. She knows things that'll get her killed if the wrong people find out. I can't tell you more. Safer if you don't know yet. Just keep her alive until the baby's born. After that, she can decide her own path. You owe me nothing, but she deserves better than what's coming." Elias. Clara read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. Elias had written this before he died, 3 months ago, before the gunshot on the trail that killed him, before everything fell apart. He'd known. Somehow he'd known they would turn on her. "You're Jonas." The man nodded. "Elias saved my life once," Jonas said. His voice was quiet, measured. "During the war, I owed him. When the letter came, I paid the debt." Clara looked at him across the fire. This stranger who'd ridden down from the mountains because a dead man asked him to. This man who'd just risked everything for someone he'd never met. "Thank you." 2 words. They weren't enough. Would never be enough. But her throat hurt too much for more. Jonas nodded again, then stood, went to his horse, started unpacking supplies. A bedroll, dried meat, more water. He worked in silence, setting up a crude camp in the shelter of the rocks. Clara watched him, trying to understand. "How long were you watching?" she asked. 3 days. 3 days. He'd been in Silver Falls for 3 days watching, waiting, seen them arrest her, seen them hold the trial, seen them build the gallows in the town square. Why wait until... Needed to be sure they'd actually do it. Needed to see who was involved. He looked at her. Needed to know if you were worth saving. The honesty was brutal, but Clara appreciated it more than false kindness. "And am I?" Jonas was quiet for a moment. Then, "You spit in Frank Jessup's face, knowing he'd kill you for it. You protected your child even when it meant dying. Yeah? You're worth saving." He finished setting up the camp, then gestured to the bedroll. "You should rest. We move at first light." "Move where?" "North, Timber Ridge. There's a midwife there who won't ask questions." Clara understood. They couldn't go back to Silver Falls. Not ever. Her life there was over. Had been over the moment she refused to name the baby's real father. She moved to the bedroll, lowered herself down carefully. Every muscle ached. Her throat throbbed. But she was alive. She pressed both hands against her belly, felt the baby moving, strong, fighting, just like its mother. Jonas sat by the fire rifle across his lap, keeping watch. Clara closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Too much adrenaline, too much fear still coursing through her blood. The memory of the rope tightening, the world going gray, the certainty that she was about to die. She'd come so close. "Jonas." He looked at her. "The letter. Elias said I know things that could get me killed." "Do you?" Clara hesitated. This was the moment, the choice. Tell this stranger everything or keep the secrets that had nearly gotten her hanged. Trust or stay silent. She thought about Elias, how he'd died on a trail 3 months ago, shot in the back by men everyone said were bandits. How the sheriff had closed the case in 2 days, no investigation, no justice. How Frank Jessup had bought up Elias's surveying equipment at auction the following week. How no one had questioned any of it. "Yes," Clara said, "I know things." Jonas waited. Elias was investigating land fraud. Territorial surveyor sent him to check property boundaries in Silver Falls. He found discrepancies. Thousands of acres stolen from homesteaders, deeds forged, witnesses who didn't exist. Who was behind it? Clara's throat was dry again. She swallowed, felt the pain. Frank Jessup, Judge Warren in Laramie, the land agent. Maybe others. Elias was building a case. He had proof, documents, testimony. It's hidden in Silver Falls. Jonas's jaw tightened. Of course it is. They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Snow continued to fall outside their shelter building, up on the ground covering tracks. Clara pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "That's why they wanted you dead," Jonas said. "Not a question. Partly." "What's the other part?" This was harder. So much harder. Clara's hands tightened on the blanket. "The mob, when they had me on the platform. They said I wouldn't name the real father." Jonas looked at her sharply. "Elias wasn't the father." "No." Silence, heavy and thick as the snow outside. "Then who—" Clara couldn't say it, couldn't form the words. Her throat closed up, and this time it had nothing to do with the rope burn. Jonas leaned forward slightly. His voice dropped, became gentler. "Clara, who's the father?" She forced herself to look at him, forced herself to say the words that would change everything. "Sheriff Thomas Hale." The name hung in the air between them like poison. Jonas went very still, not surprised, Clara realized, just calculating. "He forced you." Not a question, a statement. Clara nodded, couldn't trust her voice anymore. Jonas stared into the fire for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder, harder. "Tell me what happened." So she did. 6 months ago, Sheriff Hale raped her in the church rectory, threatened to hang her if she spoke. Clara went to Elias because he was the only one who'd believe her. "We'll get married," Elias had said. "Make the baby legally mine. Hale will never touch you again." They'd planned the wedding for March. 3 weeks before the date, Elias had gone out on a surveying trip. Routine work, he'd said. He'd be back in 5 days. He never came back. The sheriff's report said bandits, quick gunfight on the trail. Elias died instantly. They'd found his body 2 days later, brought it back to town wrapped in canvas. Closed casket funeral. No investigation. Clara had known the truth immediately, but she couldn't prove it, couldn't accuse the sheriff of murder when she had no evidence, no witnesses, nothing but her own certainty. And then her belly had started to show. By the time she was 5 months along, the whole town knew she was pregnant, knew Elias was dead, knew she'd never been married. The questions started. Who's the father? Why won't you say? What are you hiding? She'd lied. Said it was Elias. Said they'd planned to marry. But people talked. People always talked. And Frank Jessup, who stood to lose everything if Elias's investigation ever came to light, had been more than happy to fan the flames. Whore, liar, sinner, shame. 6 months of it. 6 months of being spat on in the street, refused service at stores, excluded from church. Her own father, the blacksmith, had turned her out of his house, told her she was no daughter of his, and through it all Sheriff Hale had watched with a small smile on his face, knowing exactly what he'd done, knowing he'd gotten away with it, until today when the mob decided hanging was the only solution. Clara finished the story. Her throat was raw from talking, from pain, from holding back tears she refused to shed. Jonas hadn't moved the entire time, just sat there listening, face unreadable in the firelight. When she was done, he stood up, walked to the edge of their shelter, looked out at the falling snow, stood there for a long time, so still he could have been carved from stone. Finally, "Does Hale know the baby's his?" "Yes." "How?" "He told me, 2 months ago, cornered me outside the general store. Said—" Clara's voice broke. She pushed through. "Said if the baby comes out looking like him, he'd kill us both. Safer to make sure I was already dead." Jonas turned to face her. In the shadows, his expression was impossible to read, but his voice, when he spoke, carried a weight that made Clara's skin prickle. "He'll never touch you again. I promise you that." It wasn't comfort. It was a vow. The kind of vow that got men killed. Clara should have told him not to make promises he couldn't keep, should have warned him that Sheriff Hale was dangerous, connected, protected by the law, and by men with money and power. But she didn't. Because for the first time in 6 months, someone was on her side. Someone believed her. Someone was willing to stand between her and the man who destroyed her life. And God help her, she needed that. Needed it more than air. Jonas came back to the fire, sat down across from her again. "The evidence," Elias gathered. "You said it's hidden in Silver Falls." "Yes." "Where?" Clara took a breath. This was trust. Complete trust. Giving this stranger the one piece of information that could either save her or destroy her. The church. There's a loose stone behind the altar. Elias hid everything there. Deeds, payments, letters, all the proof we'd need. Jonas nodded slowly. "We'll need to go back. They'll kill us, maybe. But if that evidence gets out, Hale and Jessup lose everything. Land, power, reputation, all of it." Clara understood what he wasn't saying. The evidence wouldn't just expose the fraud. It would give them leverage, protection, a reason for powerful men to think twice before coming after a pregnant woman and a mountain man. "When?" she asked. "Few days. Let the town settle. Let them think you're gone for good." He looked at her. "You need rest anyway, and the baby needs you to recover." As if on cue, the baby kicked. Hard enough that Clara gasped, hand going to her belly. Jonas's expression softened slightly. "Strong one." "Stubborn," Clara said. "Won't stop moving. Takes after its mother." The hint of warmth in his voice surprised her, made her look at him more carefully. Behind the scars, behind the hard edges, there was something else, something almost kind. "Why are you really doing this?" Clara asked. "The letter from Elias, I understand. You owed him, but this, going after Hale after the evidence, you don't owe me anything." Jonas was quiet for a long time, long enough that Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I had a family once. Wife, son, fever took them in 69. When Elias's letter came about you, I couldn't stay in the mountains and do nothing." The honesty of it hit Clara like a physical blow. This man wasn't here because he was brave. He was here because he was haunted, because he was trying to save people who were already dead by saving her instead. "Thank you," Clara said again. But this time she meant something different. Not just "thank you for saving my life. Thank you for trusting me with your pain." Jonas nodded once, then stood, checked his rifle again, and took up position at the edge of the shelter. "Sleep," he said. "I'll keep watch." Clara lay down on the bedroll, pulled the blanket over herself. Her body was exhausted, but her mind kept circling. The rope, the fall, Jonas's rifle shot, the ride through the forest, everything that had happened in the span of an hour. She should be dead. The baby should be dead. But they weren't. They were here in a cave in the mountains, protected by a stranger with ghosts in his eyes and a promise on his lips. It wasn't safety. Not yet. But it was a chance. And Clara Ford had learned to survive on much less than that. She closed her eyes. This time, sleep came. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering tracks, covering evidence, covering the world in white silence. And Jonas sat by the fire rifle across his knees, watching the darkness for threats that might or might not come. Back in the cave, Clara woke once in the night. The fire had died down to embers. Jonas was still there, still watching rifle, still ready. She closed her eyes again and dreamed of Elias, of the wedding that never happened, of the life they'd planned that would never be. And when she woke in the morning to gray light and falling snow, Jonas had coffee brewing and the horse saddled and ready. "We move north today," he said. "Stay ahead of anyone who might be following." Clara nodded, drank the coffee. Let him help her onto the horse because her body still ached, still protested every movement. They rode deeper into the wilderness, away from Silver Falls, away from the life Clara had known, towards something uncertain and dangerous and possibly doomed, but alive. For now, that was enough. They rode north for 3 days through country that got rougher with every mile. The first day, Clara could barely stay in the saddle. Her throat was still swollen purple with bruises that wrapped around her neck like a collar. Every breath hurt. Every swallow felt like glass. Jonas had fashioned a poultice from pine bark and snow, held it against her throat until the worst of the swelling went down, didn't say much, just did what needed doing the way a man does when talking won't fix anything. The second day was better. Clara could ride without Jonas having to steady her every few minutes, could drink water without choking, could even manage a few words though her voice came out rough and broken like something that had been shattered and poorly mended. They stopped at a creek to water the horse. Jonas knelt by the bank, filled the canteen, and when he turned back, Clara was standing near a fallen log, trying to stretch the ache from her back. 7 months pregnant and 3 days on horseback. Her body was protesting in languages she didn't know existed. Jonas handed her dried meat and hardtack. Not much of a meal, but it was food, and Clara was hungry enough not to care. They ate in silence, watching the creek run over stones, peaceful almost. If you ignored the fact that they were fugitives running from a sheriff who wanted them dead. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Clara asked. Her voice was still rough, but getting stronger. Jonas looked at his rifle, propped against a nearby tree. "Army, sharpshooter unit during the war." "Which side?" "Union, mostly." "Mostly." Interesting word choice. "And after the war, drifted, worked timber contracts, railway surveying, whatever paid, ended up in the mountains because—" He stopped. Started again. "Because I got tired of people." Clara understood that, had felt it herself over the past 6 months. The weight of constant judgment, constant scrutiny, everyone watching, everyone whispering. Sometimes solitude sounded like heaven. "You miss it?" she asked. "The mountains." Jonas was quiet for a while. Poked at the fire with a stick, watched sparks rise into the darkening sky. "Yeah," he said finally, "but missing something doesn't mean you should go back to it." They sat with that truth between them. The fire crackled. The creek burbled. Somewhere in the distance an owl called low and mournful. Clara's hands went to her belly again. The baby was quiet now, settled. She wondered what kind of life this child would have. Born to a mother with no home, no family, no future, fathered by a monster, protected by a stranger who'd already lost one family and was risking everything for a second chance at redemption. Not exactly the fairy tale she'd imagined when she was young. "Jonas," he looked at her, "after we get the evidence, after we do whatever we're going to do, what then? What do you want to happen?" Clara hadn't let herself think about it, hadn't dared to hope for anything beyond surviving the next day, the next hour. But Jonas was asking, and the question deserved an honest answer. "I want my baby to grow up safe," she said. "I want to live somewhere people don't know my name or my history. I want to wake up in the morning without being afraid." She paused. "I want Thomas Hale to face what he did." Jonas nodded slowly. "Those are good wants." Are they possible? Some of them. Not all. He didn't say it, but Clara heard it anyway. Some things you wanted you never got. Some justice never came. Some men got away with terrible things and died old and comfortable in their beds. But some didn't, and that was worth fighting for. The third day they reached the edge of Timber Ridge territory, small settlement, maybe 20 families spread out along a river valley. Jonas knew where he was going, guided the horse to a small cabin set back from the main cluster of buildings. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was home. Jonas dismounted, helped Clara down. She was moving better now, her body adjusting to the constant motion of travel. Or maybe just too exhausted to complain anymore. He knocked on the door. 3 times, paused 2 times, some kind of signal. The door opened. A woman stood there, mid-40s, dark hair streaked with gray, dressed in simple black with a white collar. Not a nun's habit, but close. A reverend's collar. "Jonas Riker," the woman said. Her voice carried the kind of authority that came from years of speaking to congregations who might or might not listen. "I heard you were dead." "Heard wrong." The woman's eyes shifted to Clara, took in the bruises on her neck, the advanced pregnancy, the exhaustion, etched into every line of her face. "You bring trouble to my door. Always do." The woman sighed, but she stepped back, held the door open. "Come in before someone sees you." Inside the cabin was simple but comfortable. Books on shelves, a fire in the hearth, a table set for one. The woman gestured to chairs. "Sit. You look like death walking." Clara sat gratefully. The baby kicked, and she winced. The woman noticed. "How far along?" 7 months. "Rough journey." "You could say that." The woman went to a cabinet, pulled out a jar of something dark and syrupy, poured a small glass, handed it to Clara. "Elderberry tonic. Good for pregnancy. Good for everything, really." She looked at Jonas. "You going to introduce us, or am I supposed to guess who this girl is?" Jonas removed his hat. "Clara Ford, meet Reverend Sarah Morris. Sarah, this is Clara." Sarah's expression changed. Recognition flickered across her face. "Clara Ford, from Silver Falls." Clara tensed. "You know me. Know of you. Word travels fast in Montana territory, especially when a pregnant woman nearly gets hanged in the town square and a mountain man shoots her down and rides off with her. So much for staying hidden." Sarah sat across from them, folded her hands on the table. "Hale's deputies came through asking about you. I sent them away." She paused. "Hale tried to assault me years ago. I was the teacher in Silver Falls then. I left because of him." The room went very quiet. Clara's voice came out barely above a whisper. "He hurt you too." It wasn't a question. Sarah met her eyes. "Tried to. I fought. Got away. Told the sheriff at the time, man named Brennan. He laughed. Said I must have misunderstood Hale's intentions. Said men like Thomas didn't need to force women." Her jaw tightened. "I left Silver Falls the next day. Came here. Took vows of service. Figured if the law wouldn't protect women, maybe God would." Clara felt something break loose in her chest. Not quite relief, not quite vindication, but the knowledge that she wasn't alone, that she wasn't the first, that Thomas Hale had been doing this for years and getting away with it, and no one had stopped him. "How many?" Clara asked. Sarah's face was grim. "Don't know. I heard rumors. Girls who left town suddenly, women who married in a hurry. But no one talked about it, not openly." "Until now," Jonas said. Sarah looked at him. "Until now." Clara's hands tightened on the table. "We're going back to Silver Falls to get evidence that'll destroy Hale and everyone protecting him." "Evidence of what?" "Land fraud, forged deeds, thousands of acres stolen. A federal surveyor named Elias Reed was building a case before Hale had him killed." Sarah's eyes widened. "Elias Reed. I heard he died. Bandits, they said." "They lied." Sarah sat back processing. Then she stood, went to a shelf, pulled down a worn leather journal, set it on the table. "Before I left Silver Falls, I kept records. Names, dates, incidents. Things I witnessed or heard about." She opened the journal, flipped through pages. "Including this." She turned the book so Clara could see. A page dated 2 years ago, an entry written in neat, precise handwriting. "Martin Whitfield, pastor of Silver Falls Community Church, died suddenly. Official cause, heart failure. But I spoke to his housekeeper. She said he'd been in perfect health the day before. Said he'd had supper with Sheriff Hale the night he died. Said the sheriff made the coffee." Clara's blood went cold. "Martin Whitfield raised me. He was the closest thing I had to a father." Sarah's face softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry." "Hale killed him too." "I believe he did. And I believe he's killed others. Men who stood in his way. Women who rejected him. Anyone who threatened his control." Jonas's voice was quiet, dangerous. "How does a man like that stay sheriff? Money, power, fear." Sarah closed the journal. "Frank Jessup owns half the county. Judge Warren in Laramie owes Hale favors. The land agent, the tax collector, the mayor. They're all connected, all profiting, and anyone who speaks against them ends up dead or driven out." She looked at Clara directly. "You're a threat because you carry Hale's child, physical evidence of what he did, and you know about the land fraud because Elias told you. You're dangerous on 2 fronts." Clara's hand went to her belly. Then we make that danger count." Sarah smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a woman who'd been waiting years for a chance at justice. "What do you need?" Jonas spoke. "Safe place for Clara while I go back to Silver Falls. The evidence is hidden in the church. I'll retrieve it. Bring it back here." "No." Clara's voice was sharp. "I'm going with you. You're 7 months pregnant. And it's my fight, my baby, my life." She met his eyes. "I'm going." Jonas looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Clara's expression stopped him. He'd learned over the past 3 days that when Clara Ford made up her mind, moving her was like trying to shift a mountain. "Fine," he said. "But we do it my way. Quick, quiet, in and out." Sarah stood. "I'm coming too." Both of them looked at her. "You'll need a lookout. Someone who knows the town, knows the people. Someone who can talk your way out if you're spotted." She crossed her arms. "Besides, I've been wanting to go back to Silver Falls for 2 years. Show them I'm not afraid anymore." Jonas nodded slowly. "3 of us, then. We leave tomorrow at dusk, ride through the night, get to Silver Falls before dawn." They spent the rest of the day preparing. Jonas checked weapons, made sure they had enough ammunition. Sarah packed food, medical supplies, things Clara might need if the stress triggered early labor. Clara rested as much as she could, knowing the next 48 hours would determine whether she lived or died. That evening, while Jonas was outside tending to the horse, Sarah sat with Clara by the fire. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. Clara nodded. "The baby, when it's born. What will you tell it about its father?" Clara had been avoiding that question for months. Now, with the birth getting closer, she couldn't avoid it anymore. "The truth," she said finally, "when the child's old enough to understand. I'll tell them their father was a monster, but their mother fought to keep them alive, and a good man named Jonas Riker gave them both a chance at a future." Sarah nodded. "That's a hard truth, but better than a lie." "Did Whitfield tell me the truth?" Clara asked. "About who I was, where I came from?" Sarah's face changed. "What do you mean?" "He found me as a baby, took me in, raised me, but he never told me who my real parents were, never told me why." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, went to her shelf, pulled down another journal. Older than the first, the leather worn smooth from handling. "Martin Whitfield and I corresponded after I left Silver Falls. He was a good man, troubled, but good." She opened the journal to a specific page. "He wrote me a letter 3 months before he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you knew the truth." She handed the journal to Clara. The letter was dated 6 months ago. Martin's handwriting unmistakable. Sarah. "If you're reading this to Clara, I'm gone. And there are things she needs to know. Clara is not an orphan, I found. She's my daughter, biological daughter. Her mother was Sarah Hale, wife of Judge Hale's eldest son. Sarah came to me broken, desperate, pregnant. Her husband was a violent man. She needed sanctuary. I gave it. We fell in love. Clara was born from that love. Sarah Hale died giving birth. Fever took her 3 days later. Her husband, Thomas's older brother, died in a riding accident 2 weeks after that. Suspicious timing. I've always believed Thomas killed him to consolidate family power. I kept Clara. Claimed I'd found her abandoned. Raised her as mine. Never told her the truth because the truth would paint a target on her back. Thomas Hale is her uncle, and he spent her whole life not knowing it. If he ever finds out, he'll see her as competition for family inheritance, family power. He'll kill her. Keep her safe, Sarah. She deserves better than the legacy I've left her." Martin, Clara read it 3 times. Each time the words rearranged her entire understanding of her life. Martin Whitfield was her real father. Not some kind stranger, but her actual father. Sarah Hale was her mother, which meant Thomas Hale was her uncle, which meant when he raped her. Clara ran to the corner of the room and vomited. Sarah was there instantly, holding her hair back, supporting her. When the retching stopped, Clara stayed bent over, gasping, shaking. "He's my uncle," she whispered. "Thomas Hale is my uncle, and he—" She couldn't finish, couldn't say it out loud. Sarah's hand was firm on her shoulder. He didn't know. The letter makes that clear. Martin kept it secret from everyone. Does that make it better? No, it makes it different. But not better? Clara straightened slowly. Her whole body felt wrong, like her skin didn't fit anymore. The baby kicked hard and she pressed both hands against her belly. "This child," she said. "What does that make it?" Sarah's voice was gentle but honest. "Genetically, the product of incest, though unknowing. Legally, your child and yours alone. Thomas Hale has no claim. And morally, this baby is innocent. Whatever its parentage, whatever the circumstances of conception, it didn't choose any of this." Sarah moved to stand in front of Clara, made her look up. "You love this child?" "Yes." "Then that's all that matters. Love doesn't care about bloodlines, it cares about choice." The door opened. Jonas stepped inside, saw Clara's face, saw the journal in Sarah's hands. "What happened?" Sarah told him, quietly, efficiently. Jonas listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was silent for a long time. Then he walked to Clara, knelt in front of her, so they were eye level. "Does it change anything?" he asked. Clara didn't understand. "What? Does knowing Hale's your uncle change what we're doing? Does it change the plan?" Clara thought about it. Really thought. "No," she said. "It makes it worse, makes him worse, but it doesn't change what needs to happen." Jonas nodded. "Good. Then we move forward." He stood, offered his hand. Clara took it, let him pull her to her feet. "We leave in 2 hours," Jonas said. "Sarah, you still coming? Try and stop me." They rode out under cover of darkness. 3 riders on 2 horses, Clara riding with Jonas, Sarah on her own mount. The night was cold, clear. Stars overhead like scattered diamonds. Beautiful if you ignored the fact that they were riding toward probable death. The journey took 6 hours. They approached Silver Falls from the east, avoiding the main road, sticking to game trails and creek beds. Jonas knew the country well, had scouted it during his 3 days of watching the town before Clara's hanging. They stopped a mile out, tied the horses in a grove of cottonwoods. "Church is on the west side," Jonas said, keeping his voice low. "We go on foot from here. Stay in shadows, no talking once we're in town." Sarah nodded. Clara checked the knife Jonas had given her, tucked it into her belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. They moved through the pre-dawn darkness like ghosts. Silver Falls was quiet, most people still asleep. A few lights in windows, smoke rising from chimneys. The town looked peaceful, innocent. Clara knew better. The church rose up ahead, white clapboard steeple pointing at the sky. Clara had been married in that church. No, wait. She'd been supposed to be married in that church, to Elias. Before he died, before everything fell apart. Jonas tested the side door. Locked. He pulled a thin piece of metal from his coat, worked the lock. 30 seconds later, the door clicked open. Inside the church was dark and cold. Pews in neat rows. Altar at the front. Cross on the wall behind it. Everything exactly as Clara remembered. She led the way to the altar, Jonas and Sarah following. Behind the altar, the wall was wood paneling. Clara counted boards, found the right one pressed. A section swung inward on hidden hinges. "Elias built this," she whispered. "Secret compartment. No one else knows." Inside was a leather satchel. Clara pulled it out, handed it to Jonas. He opened it, checked the contents by the light of a small lantern Sarah had lit. Documents, dozens of them. Deeds, letters, ledgers, everything Elias had gathered. Jonas nodded. "This is enough. We can go." But Clara wasn't moving. She was staring at something else in the compartment, a smaller bundle wrapped in cloth. She reached for it, unwrapped it. Inside was a single document, official seal of Montana Territory, a birth certificate. Clara's hands started shaking before she even read the name. Birth certificate, child. Clara born. March 14, 1852, mother Sarah Hale, father Martin Whitfield. Below it another document, a marriage certificate dated 1 month before Clara's birth. Martin Whitfield and Sarah Hale, married in secret, witnessed by Reverend Peter Gaines. Clara's parents had been married. She wasn't illegitimate, wasn't a bastard. Her father hadn't just found her. He'd loved her mother, had married her, had lost her, and had spent 24 years protecting their daughter from the truth. "Clara," Jonas's voice was urgent. "We need to move." But Clara couldn't move, couldn't process. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her family, about her place in the world was rewriting itself in real time. Sarah touched her shoulder. "Bring it. We'll look at it later. Right now we have to go." Clara nodded numbly, tucked the documents into her dress, turned to leave. The church door slammed open. Light flooded in. Lanterns, torches, men with guns. Sheriff Thomas Hale stood in the doorway, 6 armed deputies behind him. "Hello, Clara," he said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I've been waiting for you to come home." Jonas's hand went to his rifle, but there were too many of them, too many guns, too many angles. Hale smiled. "Drop the weapon, mountain man, or I'll shoot the Reverend first, then the girl. Your choice." Jonas looked at Clara, at Sarah, at the impossible odds. He set the rifle down. Hale stepped forward, boots echoing on the wooden floor. "You should have stayed gone, Clara. Should have disappeared into the wilderness and let yourself be forgotten." He glanced at the satchel in Jonas's hands. "But you had to come back for evidence, had to try to be a hero." He gestured to his deputies. "Take them!" 2 men moved forward. One grabbed Sarah. Another reached for Clara. Jonas moved. Fast, brutal, efficient. His fist, connected with the deputy's jaw, sent the man sprawling. He pivoted, kicked another in the knee, heard bone crack, grabbed a third by the throat, used him as a shield. Gunshots exploded through the church. Wood splintered, glass shattered. Jonas dove behind a pew, pulling Clara with him. Sarah scrambled in the opposite direction. Chaos. Pure chaos. Hale was shouting orders, deputies firing. Jonas returning fire with a pistol he'd pulled from somewhere. Clara pressed against the floor, hands over her head, the baby kicking frantically inside her. "Please, not now. Not here. Don't let my baby be born in a gunfight." Jonas grabbed her arm. "Run. Back door. Now." They crawled between pews, staying low. Sarah appeared beside them, face pale but determined. The back door was 20 feet away. 15. 10. They burst through into the graveyard, ran between headstones, monuments, markers. Clara's lungs burned, her belly cramped, but she kept running. Behind them, more gunshots, men shouting, pursuit. Jonas stopped at the edge of the graveyard behind a large stone monument. Turned, fired twice. 2 deputies went down. "How many bullets you got left?" Sarah asked. 4. "There's 8 of them." "I know." Clara felt wetness between her legs, looked down. Water. Her water had broken. "Jonas," she gasped. "The baby. It's coming." Jonas's face went white. "Now. Now." A bullet hit the monument, sprayed them with stone chips. Jonas grabbed Clara, half-carried her toward the tree line. Sarah covered them, firing a small pistol she'd produced from somewhere. They made it to the trees, kept running. Clara's vision was blurring with pain, with fear, with the absolute certainty that she was about to give birth in the middle of a forest while being hunted by men who wanted her dead. This was not how this was supposed to happen. They found a fallen log, a natural shelter. Jonas got Clara behind it. Sarah took up position, watching for pursuit. "I need to check," Jonas said to Clara. "Need to see how far along you are." Clara nodded, couldn't speak another contraction, hitting like a hammer. Jonas examined her quickly, professionally. When he looked up, his face was grim. "Baby's coming fast. We can't move you." "Can't stay here either," Sarah said. "They'll find us. Then we hold them off." Jonas reloaded his pistol. "Sarah, you delivered babies before, 3, in my missionary work. Good. You deliver this one. I'll keep us alive." It was insane. Impossible. Delivering a baby in the wilderness while being hunted by armed men. But Clara didn't have a choice. The baby was coming whether she was ready or not. Sarah knelt beside her. "Okay, Clara. Listen to me. When the next contraction comes, you push. Understand?" Clara nodded. gripped Sarah's hand so hard she felt bones grind. The contraction came. Clara pushed, screamed, pushed again. Gunshots in the distance, getting closer. Jonas fired, twice, 3 times. "They're coming," he said. His voice was calm, steady. "Hurry." Sarah worked efficiently, hands steady. Almost there. One more push. Clara pushed. Felt something give, felt pressure release, heard a sound she'd been waiting 7 months to hear, a baby crying. Sarah lifted the infant, a tiny, perfect girl covered in blood and birth fluids, and absolutely beautiful. "It's a girl," Sarah said. "She's perfect." Clara reached for her daughter, held her. This tiny life she'd fought so hard to protect, this innocent child who'd done nothing wrong and deserved everything right. "Grace," Clara whispered. "Her name is Grace." More gunshots, very close now. Jonas turned to them. His face was different, harder, resolved. "Take the baby. Run north. Don't stop. There's a cabin, 20 miles. You'll find it." "Jonas, no. I'll hold them here. Give you time. You'll die." "Maybe." He looked at Clara, at baby Grace. "But you'll live, and that's what matters." He stood rifle ready and stepped out from behind the log, into the clearing facing 6 armed men led by Sheriff Thomas Hale. "That's far enough," Jonas called. Hale stopped, smiled. "Brave. Stupid, but brave. Let them go. You want someone to kill, kill me. But let the woman and baby go." Hale laughed. "You think this is about killing? This is about control, power, keeping what's mine. Clara's not yours. She's my blood, my family's blood. That baby's my blood." Hale's voice rose. "Everything in this territory is mine, and I don't let go of what's mine." Jonas's finger tightened on the trigger. "Wrong answer." He fired. The bullet took Hale in the shoulder. Hale staggered, fell. His deputies opened fire. Jonas dove behind a tree. Bullets ripped through bark leaves. He fired back, dropped another man, reloaded, fired again. But there were too many, and he was one man. Behind the log, Sarah was wrapping baby Grace in cloth torn from her own dress. Clara was trying to stand, legs shaking, body protesting. "We have to help him," Clara said, "and we have to run." Sarah pulled her to her feet. "It's what he wants, what he's dying for." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. Dying for. She looked back, saw Jonas fighting, saw the deputies closing in. "Jonas!" she screamed. He turned. For just a second made eye contact, and in that second, Clara saw everything he wasn't saying. "Goodbye. I'm sorry. Take care of her. Live." Then he turned back to the fight. Sarah pulled Clara into the forest. Clara clutched baby Grace, stumbled over roots through brush. Behind them, gunfire echoed, continued, then slowly faded. Silence. Clara stopped, tried to turn back. Sarah held her firm. "Don't. There's nothing you can do. He saved us." "I know. He didn't have to. I know that too." They kept moving. North through forest that got denser. Clara's body screamed with every step. She'd just given birth. Should be in bed recovering. Instead, she was fleeing through wilderness with a newborn infant and a reverend who'd become her only ally. 1 hour passed. 2. The sun rose, turned the forest gold. Finally, when Clara couldn't walk another step, Sarah found a stream. Clean water. A sheltered spot beneath an overhang of rock. They stopped. Clara sat, nursed baby Grace for the first time. The infant latched on, fed hungrily. So small, so perfect, so impossibly alive against all odds. Sarah kept watch pistol ready. "You think he made it?" Clara asked. Her voice was hoarse, broken. Sarah didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was gentle. "I think Jonas Riker did what he came to do. He kept you alive, kept the baby alive, and he made sure Thomas Hale knows you're not afraid anymore." Clara looked down at Grace. At this tiny girl who'd been born in violence, but would be raised in something better, something safer. "What now?" Clara whispered. "Now we survive," Sarah said, just like he wanted. Somewhere behind them in Silver Falls, Sheriff Thomas Hale sat in the church with a bullet wound in his shoulder surrounded by dead and wounded deputies, and realized for the first time in his life that he might not win. And somewhere in the forest, a mountain man named Jonas Riker made a choice that would change everything. But that's a story for part 3. Clara sat nursing Grace, waiting. Sarah kept watch. An hour later, hoofbeats approached. Sarah raised the pistol. Clara pulled Grace closer, shifted so she could run if needed. Every muscle in her body protested. She'd given birth less than 3 hours ago. Running wasn't really an option, but she'd do it anyway if she had to. The sound of hooves on forest floor, getting closer, a horse's heavy breathing. Then a voice, rough and familiar. "Sarah, Clara, it's me." Jonas. He rode into the clearing on a horse Clara didn't recognize. His shirt was dark with blood. His left arm hung at an odd angle. But he was upright, breathing, alive. Sarah lowered the pistol. Sweet, merciful God. Jonas dismounted, staggered, caught himself against a tree. His face was gray with pain and blood loss. But his eyes found Clara's, found baby Grace, and something in his expression softened. "You both alive?" Clara couldn't speak, could only nod. Jonas's legs gave out. He slid down the tree trunk, landed hard on the ground. Sarah was at his side, immediately examining wounds. 2 bullets, one through the shoulder, one grazed his ribs. Lost blood, but nothing vital hit. She looked at Jonas. "You're the luckiest unlucky man I've ever met." Jonas tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. Luck had nothing to do with it. Sarah started tearing strips from her already ruined dress, making bandages. "What happened after we left?" Jonas closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the tree. When he spoke, his voice was tired but steady. Sarah worked in silence for a moment, cleaning the wounds, wrapping bandages tight. Then she stopped, looked at Jonas's face, really looked. "I know you," she said quietly. Jonas went very still. "Don't think so, ma'am." "Not as Jonas Riker." Sarah stood, walked to where Clara sat nursing Grace, pulled Martin's journal from her bag, the one she'd brought from Timber Ridge. She flipped through pages, found one, read aloud. Martin Whitfield's journal, dated 1861. "The Hale boys are growing into men. Thomas the eldest shows his father's ambition, but none of his restraint. Young Jacob, barely 16, is the gentler soul. I fear what this family will make of him." Sarah looked up at Jonas. "Jacob Hale, Thomas's younger brother, left Silver Falls 15 years ago. Everyone said he died in the mountains." Clara's hands tightened on Grace. Her voice came out sharp. "What?" Jonas didn't move, didn't deny, met Clara's eyes. "Spent 15 years in those mountains making sure Jacob Hale stayed dead, making sure I'd never turn into my brother." Clara was shaking, not from fear, from the weight of this revelation. The letter from Elias. How did he know where to find you? Elias was smart, did his research before coming to Silver Falls. Found out Thomas had a brother who disappeared, tracked me down through old timber contracts, surveying records. Came to my cabin 2 years ago. Jonas's voice softened slightly. Told me what Thomas was doing. Asked if I'd testify if he ever built a case. I said no. Couldn't come back. Couldn't face that name again. He paused. Then 3 months ago, his letter arrived. About you. About the baby. About Thomas trying to kill you both. Jonas looked at Grace sleeping peacefully in Clara's arms. And I realized running wasn't protecting anyone. It was just letting Thomas win. Letting him hurt people because I was too much of a coward to stop him. Sarah closed the journal. Does Thomas know that you're alive? No, I made sure of that. Changed everything. Name, history, even the way I talk. Mountain accent instead of town speech. Let my hair grow, grew the beard. Time and weather did the rest. Clara's voice was small. When you shot him today, when you stood in that clearing and faced him down, he didn't recognize me, saw a stranger, a mountain man protecting a woman. Jonas's smile was bitter. Never occurred to him that his dead brother would come back to destroy him. Silence settled over them. Grace stirred, whimpered. Clara rocked her gently. Finally Clara spoke. You could have told me, back in the cave. Back when I told you about the rape. Would it have changed anything? I don't know. Maybe. That's why I didn't tell you. Jonas leaned his head back against the tree. Needed you to trust Jonas Riker, not question whether Jacob Hale's brother could really be different from Thomas. Sarah stood. We need to keep moving. Sun's getting lower, and those deputies might come back with reinforcements. She was right. But Clara couldn't move yet, couldn't process. The man who'd saved her life was the brother of the man who'd destroyed it. Jonas saw her struggling. If you want me to leave, I will. Won't blame you. Having a Hale's blood near you and Grace. Stop. Clara's voice was firm. You said it yourself. Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. She looked at him directly. You chose to save us, chose to fight Thomas, chose to be better than your name. She paused. That's all that matters. Jonas's expression cracked. Just for a second. Relief, gratitude, something close to hope. Thank you. Clara nodded, then asked the question that really mattered. What happened after we left with Thomas and the deputies? Jonas's face hardened again. Back to business. Shot 3 of them, including Thomas. Shoulder wounds same as mine. He went down screaming. A pause. The others ran, saw their sheriff bleeding, saw half their men dead, decided they didn't want to die for land fraud and rape. They just left, Clara asked. Not before I made them a deal. Jonas opened his eyes, looked at Clara. Told them if they let you go, let you leave the territory in peace, I wouldn't come back and kill every last one of them in their sleep. Sarah stopped bandaging. They believed you. They just watched me take down 6 armed men while protecting a woman in labor. Yeah, they believed me. He reached into his coat with his good arm, pulled out the leather satchel. Elias's evidence, still intact. Got this back too. One of the deputies tried to grab it. I convinced him otherwise. Clara took the satchel with shaking hands. Everything Elias had died for. Everything they'd risked for. Still here. Still real. There's more, Jonas said. His voice was getting weaker. Hale was talking while I bandaged him. Pain makes men chatty. He told me things. What things? Sarah asked, working on the shoulder wound. About the land fraud. About Martin Whitfield. About Clara's mother. Jonas looked at Clara. He didn't know you were his niece, not until this morning. Clara's blood went cold. What? One of his deputies found the marriage certificate, the birth certificate, showed them to Hale while he was bleeding. Jonas's face was grim. That's when he really lost control. Started ranting about family honor, about his brother's widow betraying the family name, about how Martin Whitfield had stolen what belonged to the Hales. Sarah's hands stilled on the bandage. He knows now. He knows. And he's going to come after Clara even harder, not just for the land fraud evidence, for family revenge. The weight of it settled over Clara like a shroud. Thomas Hale knew she was his niece, knew the baby he'd fathered was his own great niece, knew that his rape had violated not just a woman, but his own blood. And instead of horror, instead of shame, he felt anger, because that's what monsters did. They made everything about themselves. Then we end this, Clara said. Her voice was stronger than she felt. We take the evidence to the federal marshal. We make sure Hale never hurts anyone again. Jonas nodded slowly. There's a marshal station in Helena, 3 days' ride. Can you make it? Sarah asked, tying off the bandage. Have to. They rested for 2 more hours. Sarah found edible plants, made a poultice for Jonas's wounds. Clara fed Grace again, changed her using cloth strips Sarah provided. The baby was remarkably calm for a newborn who'd been born in gunfire and carried through a forest. She barely cried, just looked at Clara with dark, serious eyes that seemed to understand more than an infant should. You're a fighter, Clara thought. Just like your mother. When the sun was past noon, they moved. Jonas on his horse, Clara riding behind him, with Grace wrapped against her chest. Sarah on foot, leading them north through trails only she knew. The journey to Helena took 4 days instead of 3. Jonas's wounds slowed them. Twice they had to stop while Sarah rebandaged him, poured whiskey over torn flesh to prevent infection. He never complained, never showed pain except in the tightness around his eyes. On the 3rd night, camped beside a creek, Clara asked the question that had been eating at her. Why didn't you run? After you shot Hale, you could have escaped. Come with us." Jonas was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire, watching flames dance. "Because running's what I've done my whole life," he said finally. "Ran from the war, ran from my dead family, ran to the mountains and told myself it was peace when really it was cowardice." He looked at her. "When I got Elias's letter asking me to protect you, I saw a chance to stop running, to stand and fight for something that mattered." He paused. "Couldn't run this time, not when you needed me." Clara's throat tightened. "You could have died." "Yeah, but I didn't." A faint smile crossed his face. "And now you and Grace get to live. That's worth more than my life ever was." Sarah, sitting on the other side of the fire, spoke quietly. "Your life has more worth than you think, Jonas Riker." He didn't answer, just went back to staring at the flames. They reached Helena on the fourth day. Federal Marshal's office was a sturdy brick building on the main street. Marshal James Wheeler was inside, a man in his mid-40s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Until Clara walked in carrying a 4-day-old baby, followed by a blood-stained reverend and a wounded mountain man carrying a satchel full of evidence. Wheeler stood slowly. "What in God's name?" Sarah spoke first. "We need to report a crime, multiple crimes. Murder, rape, land fraud, attempted murder, and conspiracy involving a county sheriff, a territorial judge, and half a dozen other men." Wheeler's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation. We have proof." Jonas set the satchel on the desk, opened it, spread out documents. Wheeler sat back down, started reading. His face grew darker with every page. 20 minutes later, he looked up. "This is the most documented case of corruption I've seen in 30 years of law enforcement." He looked at Clara. "You're the woman from Silver Falls, the one they tried to hang." "Yes, sir." "And the baby," Clara lifted her chin, "mine, born 4 days ago in the wilderness while running from Sheriff Thomas Hale and his men." Wheeler's jaw tightened. "Hale did this. Hale raped me 6 months ago. When I got pregnant, he tried to have me killed to hide what he'd done. A federal surveyor named Elias Reed was building a case against Hale for land fraud. Hale had Reed murdered 3 months ago." Wheeler stood, walked to the window, stood there for a full minute processing. Then he turned back. "I'll need sworn statements from all of you, detailed accounts. Names, dates, everything you can remember." "You'll arrest Hale?" Jonas asked. "I'll do more than that. I'll bring in federal investigators. We'll tear Silver Falls apart piece by piece until we find every man involved." Wheeler's voice was hard. "And they'll all hang, every last one." They gave their statements. It took hours. Clara's voice was hoarse by the end from talking, from reliving every horrible moment. But she got through it, for Grace, for Elias, for every woman Thomas Hale had hurt. When they finished, Wheeler arranged rooms for them at a boarding house. Clean beds, hot food, safety for the first time in weeks. That night, Clara sat by the window holding Grace, watching the street below. Helena was bigger than Silver Falls, busier, more anonymous. A place where a woman with a baby could disappear into the crowd and start over. A knock at the door. Sarah entered, carrying a tray of food. "You need to eat. Keep your strength up for nursing." Clara took the tray. Bread, cheese, dried fruit. Simple but good. She ate mechanically, not tasting. "What happens now?" Clara asked. Sarah sat in the other chair. "Wheeler sends deputies to Silver Falls. They arrest Hale, Jessup, Judge Warren, anyone else implicated. There'll be a trial. You'll have to testify. And after you're free, you can go anywhere, be anyone." Free. The word should have felt good. Instead, it felt hollow. Clara had been fighting for so long, running for so long, that she didn't know what peace looked like anymore. "I don't have anywhere to go," Clara said quietly. "No family, no home, nothing but Grace." Sarah's expression softened. "You have more than you think. Jonas told me something while you were giving your statement." "What?" "There's a cabin 20 miles north of Silver Falls near a place called Clearwater Creek. Jonas built it years ago, After his wife and son died, he couldn't bring himself to live there, so it's been sitting empty. Clara's pulse quickened. Why are you telling me this? Because before we left for Helena, Jonas signed the deed over to you, put it in your name, the cabin, the land, everything. It's yours. Clara couldn't breathe. He can't. That's his property, his gift to you and Grace. Sarah leaned forward. He said every child deserves a home, and he wanted to make sure Grace had one. Tears burned Clara's eyes. Where is he now? Doctor's office, getting his wounds properly treated. Sarah paused. He's leaving tomorrow, going back to the mountains. What why? Because that's who he is. He came down to save you. He did. Now he's going back to the only place he knows how to exist. Clara handed Grace to Sarah. I need to see him. She found Jonas at the doctor's office 2 blocks away. He was sitting on an examination table, freshly bandaged, putting his shirt back on. The doctor was washing his hands in a basin. You'll live, the doctor said, but those wounds need to stay clean. Change the dressing twice daily. No heavy lifting for at least 2 weeks. Jonas nodded, saw Clara in the doorway. You shouldn't be walking. Just gave birth. Sarah told me. About the cabin. Jonas finished buttoning his shirt. It's just sitting there. Someone should use it. You built it for your family, your wife, your son. They're dead. Have been for 7 years. Holding on to that cabin won't bring them back. He looked at her. But giving it to you and Grace. That's something good, something that matters. Clara crossed the room, stood in front of him. This man who'd saved her life twice, who'd fought for her, bled for her, given her a future. Come with us, she said, to the cabin. Don't go back to the mountains alone. Jonas's expression was unreadable. Clara, I know you think you don't deserve peace, don't deserve a family, but you're wrong. Her voice cracked. Grace deserves to know the man who gave her a chance to be born, and I deserve to have someone in my life who sees me as more than damaged goods. Jonas stood, towered over her. For a moment Clara thought he'd say yes, thought she saw something in his eyes that looked like hope. Then he stepped back. I'm not the man you need, Clara. I'm too broken. Too much blood on my hands. You and Grace deserve better. You're wrong. I'm not. He moved toward the door, stopped, turned back. But I'll check on you, once the baby's older, once you're settled. Make sure you're both safe. It wasn't what Clara wanted, but it was something. Promise, she asked. Promise. He left. Clara stood in the doctor's office holding back tears, wondering why the man who'd fought so hard to save her couldn't fight hard enough to save himself. The trial took 3 months to organize. Federal investigators descended on Silver Falls like locusts. They interviewed witnesses, examined documents, dug up graves. What they found was worse than anyone imagined. Thomas Hale hadn't just stolen land and raped women. He'd murdered at least 7 people over 15 years. Martin Whitfield, Elias Reed, 3 homesteaders who'd tried to fight the fraudulent claims, a woman who'd threatened to expose him, a deputy who'd grown a conscience, all of them buried in unmarked graves or staged as accidents. Frank Jessup had known about all of it, helped cover it up, profited from it. Judge Warren had taken bribes, thrown out legitimate claims, sent innocent people to prison to protect the conspiracy. The whole county was rotten, built on blood and lies. Clara testified in September, stood in front of a federal courtroom in Helena, and told her story. Every terrible detail. The rape, the pregnancy, the hanging, the flight. Thomas Hale sat 20 feet away, shackled, glaring at her with eyes full of hate. Clara didn't look away, didn't flinch, just told the truth and let it burn. The jury deliberated for 40 minutes. Guilty, on all counts. Hale was sentenced to hang, Frank Jessup with him. Judge Warren got life in prison. The land agent, the tax collector, 2 deputies, all guilty, all sentenced. Outside the courthouse, Clara stood in the autumn sunlight, holding 8-month-old Grace, and felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Relief. It was over. Really over. Thomas Hale would never hurt anyone again. Sarah stood beside her. "What will you do now?" Clara looked down at Grace. The baby was laughing, reaching for falling leaves. So perfect, so innocent, untouched by the evil that had created her. "We're going home," Clara said. "To Clearwater Creek," Sarah smiled. "Good. That's good." They said goodbye the next morning. Sarah was heading back to Timber Ridge to her church and her mission work. Clara was heading north to a cabin she'd never seen, built by a man who'd saved her life and then walked away. "If you need anything," Sarah said, hugging her tight, "send word. I'll come." "I know, thank you, for everything." Sarah pulled back, looked at Grace. "Take care of this one. She's special." "I will." Clara rode out of Helena with Grace strapped to her chest and everything she owned in saddlebags. 2 days later, she found Clearwater Creek. The cabin sat in a meadow surrounded by pine forest. Simple structure, one-room stone chimney covered porch. A creek ran 50 yards away, water so clear you could see every stone on the bottom. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and eternal. Wildflowers covered the meadow, thousands of them, purple, yellow, white. It was the most beautiful place Clara had ever seen. She dismounted, approached slowly. The door was unlocked. Inside the cabin was dusty but sound. A bed in one corner, a table and chairs, a rocking chair by the fireplace, shelves for storage, a cradle hand-carved sitting empty by the hearth. Jonas had built a cradle, years ago, for the son who died before he could use it. Clara ran her fingers over the smooth wood. She set Grace in it. The baby fit perfectly. Looked up at Clara and smiled. "We're home, little one," Clara whispered. "We're finally home." The first weeks were hard. Clara learned to survive alone, how to hunt fish trap, how to preserve food for winter, how to keep a fire going all night, how to protect herself and Grace from wildlife weather isolation. But she learned, adapted, survived, because that's what Clara Ford did. She survived. Neighbors were few but kind. A family 5 miles east brought her vegetables, taught her to can. An old trapper 10 miles west showed her how to set snares. They didn't ask questions, didn't judge, just helped a woman with a baby who was trying to make a life. Winter came. Snow covered the meadow, turned the world white and quiet. Clara chopped wood, kept the fire burning, nursed Grace through cold nights. The baby thrived, grew strong, started crawling, then pulling herself up, then taking wobbly steps. Spring arrived. The wildflowers bloomed again, covering the ground. Clara sat on the porch watching Grace toddle through the meadow, laughing, and felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Peace. On a day in late May, a year after the trial, a rider approached. Clara recognized him from a distance, the way he sat a horse, the set of his shoulders, the rifle across his back. Jonas. He dismounted slowly, looked older, more weathered, but alive, whole. Grace saw him, squealed with delight, toddled quickly toward him on unsteady legs, arms outstretched. Jonas caught her, lifted her up, and for the first time since Clara had met him, she saw him truly smile. "She's gotten big," he said. Clara walked over. "She's walking everywhere now, started about a month ago." "I can see that." He set Grace down. The baby immediately grabbed his leg, held on tight. Jonas looked bemused. "She friendly with everyone? Just you." They stood there awkward, neither knowing what to say. A year apart. A year of silence. A year of wondering. Finally, Clara spoke. "Coffee's on if you want some." Jonas nodded. "Coffee sounds good." They sat on the porch. Grace played in the dirt at their feet. The mountains rose around them, peaceful and patient. "You came back?" Clara said. "Told you I would, once you were settled." "Took you a year." "Needed time, to think, to figure some things out." He looked at her. "You angry?" Clara considered. "No, I understand." They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching Grace discover rocks and sticks and beetles. Jonas cleared his throat. "There's something I need to give you." He reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope, yellowed, worn, like it had been carried for a long time. "I wrote this the night before we went back to Silver Falls, before the church, before everything. He handed it to Clara. I was supposed to give it to Sarah if I died, but I didn't die, so I'm giving it to you now. Clara took the envelope, her name on the front in Jonas's rough handwriting. What is it? Read it. Clara opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in writing. Clara, if you're reading this, I didn't make it, and I'm sorry for that. I lied when I said I came because Elias asked. Truth is, I came because I was tired of running. 15 years in the mountains taught me solitude. But you taught me what I'd been running from, connection. I had a family once, a wife, a son. Fever took them in '69. I blamed myself for not being there, for choosing work over home. When I read Elias's letter about you pregnant, alone, hunted, I saw my wife, I saw my son, and I couldn't run this time. I know I'm not Grace's father. I know I'm just the man who showed up. But if you'd have me even as memory, I'd be honored to be called family. There's a cabin 20 miles north of Silver Falls, near Clearwater Creek. I built it years ago, never lived in it, couldn't bring myself to. It's yours now. Deeds in your name. Raise Grace there. Let her run wild. Let her be free. And maybe sometimes tell her about the mountain man who rode down from nowhere and loved you both from the moment he met you. Yours, Jonas. Clara read it twice, then a third time, each word rearranging something inside her chest. Loved you both. She looked at Jonas. He was staring at the mountains, jaw tight, waiting for her reaction. You loved us, Clara said softly, even then. Jonas didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was rough. Yeah, even then. Why didn't you say anything? What was I supposed to say? I'm a broken man with blood on my hands and ghosts in my head. You deserved better. Stop deciding what I deserve. Clara set down her coffee, turned to face him. I've spent my whole life with people telling me what I deserve. Shame. Punishment. Death. I'm done with that. She reached over, took his hand, scarred, weathered, strong. You saved my life. You gave me and Grace a home. You fought for us when no one else would. Her voice cracked. You think that's not deserving of love? Jonas looked at their joined hands. I don't know how to be what you need. I don't need perfection. I need someone who shows up, someone who stays. She squeezed his hand. Can you do that? Jonas was quiet for a long time. Long enough that Clara thought he'd say no, thought he'd ride back to his mountains and she'd never see him again. Then he squeezed back. Yeah, I can do that. Grace chose that moment to fall face first into the dirt, started crying. Both adults moved at once, but Jonas got there first, scooped her up, brushed her off. The baby stopped crying, immediately grabbed his beard, laughed. Jonas looked at Clara over Grace's head. She's got a grip. She's tenacious. Wonder where she gets it. They stayed there in the meadow for the rest of the afternoon. Jonas told Clara about his year, how he'd gone back to the mountains but couldn't settle, how every day he'd thought about her and Grace, how he'd finally admitted that hiding wasn't the same as healing. Clara told him about the trial, about building a life here, about the loneliness and the fear and the small victories. When the sun started setting, turning the sky orange and pink, Jonas stood. I should go, get back before dark. Clara's heart sank. Back to the mountains. Back to my camp 2 miles from here. He looked at the cabin. Figured I'd stay close, if that's all right. You've been camping 2 miles away. For the past week, trying to work up the courage to come say hello. Clara almost laughed. This man who'd faced down 6 armed men was afraid of knocking on her door. Stay for dinner, she said. Please. Jonas hesitated, then nodded. They ate simple food. Venison stew bread Clara had learned to bake. Grace sat in her high chair throwing more food than she ate. Jonas caught flying chunks of bread, pretended to be offended, made Grace giggle. After dinner, Clara put Grace to bed in the cradle, sang her a lullaby her father Martin Whitfield used to sing. Grace's eyes drifted closed, peaceful. Clara came back to the main room. Jonas was standing by the fireplace looking at a small shelf Clara had built. On it were 4 things: Elias's surveying compass, Sarah's Bible, the marriage certificate of Martin and Sarah Whitfield. and a pressed wildflower from the meadow. Your altar, Jonas said quietly. My reminders of where I came from, who helped me, what I survived. Jonas reached out, touched the compass. You ever regret it? Not marrying Elias, not having that normal life, Clara considered. Elias and I, we cared about each other, but we weren't in love. Not really. We were allies, friends, partners in trying to fix a broken system. She moved to stand beside Jonas. I regret that he died, that he never got to see justice done, but I don't regret the path that brought me here. Jonas turned to look at her. In the firelight, his face was softer, younger almost. And where is here exactly? Clara smiled. Home. For the first time in my life, I'm home. She reached up, touched his face, felt the scars, the roughness, the history written in flesh. Jonas closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. Clara, I'm not good at this, at being close to people. I know. I'll mess it up, probably more than once. I know that too. And I can't promise I won't wake up some mornings and need to go to the mountains, need space. Then go and come back, that's all I ask. Don't disappear. Jonas opened his eyes, looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. I won't disappear, he said. Never again. He kissed her, gentle, careful, like she might break. Clara kissed him back, not gentle, not careful. She'd been broken and survived. She didn't need to be handled like glass. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jonas rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight, Clara whispered. Don't go back to your camp. Clara, I'm not asking for forever. Just tonight. Jonas nodded. Tonight. They lay together in the bed Jonas had built years ago for a family that never lived there, held each other while the fire died down and the stars came out and the world settled into quiet. It wasn't perfect. Neither of them was whole. Both carried scars that would never fully heal, but it was real and honest, and more than either of them thought they deserved. In the cradle nearby, Grace slept peacefully, safe, loved, protected. The next morning, Jonas rode to his camp and brought back his things. Not all of them, not permanently, just enough to stay a while. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Jonas taught Clara to shoot better, to track game, to read weather in the clouds. Clara taught him to cook something other than jerky, to laugh without guilt, to let someone care for him. They didn't talk about marriage, didn't need to. They were building something more fundamental than legal paperwork. They were building trust. Grace grew, started talking. Her first word was Mama. Her second was Joe, her attempt at Jonas. She followed him everywhere, a tiny shadow in a dress demanding to help with every task. Jonas made her a smaller version of his tools, a child-sized axe, a fishing pole for tiny hands. He taught her gently, patiently, never pushing, always encouraging. Clara watched them together and felt her heart expand in ways she didn't know were possible. In late October, a year and a half after Clara had first arrived at the cabin, Jonas came back from checking traps with a serious expression. Need to show you something. He led her to a spot half a mile from the cabin, a clearing with a view of the mountains. He'd been working on something here, Clara realized. The ground was cleared, leveled. What is this? She asked. Jonas pulled a folded paper from his pocket, handed it to her. It was a building plan, hand-drawn but detailed. A larger cabin, 2 rooms, a real kitchen, a bedroom separate from the main living space, a covered porch facing the sunrise. Been thinking, Jonas said. Grace is getting bigger, needs her own space. And if we're going to stay here, really stay, we need a proper house. Clara's throat tightened. Jonas took her hand. If you'll have me, permanent, not just visiting from a camp 2 miles away. Jonas, I know I'm not easy. I know I've got demons. But I also know I don't want to live without you and Grace. Don't want to go back to being alone. He looked at her. So I'm asking, will you let me stay? Clara kissed him, long and deep and full of everything she couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, she was crying. Yes, yes, you fool, of course, yes. They built the new house together over the winter. Jonas did the heavy work. Clara helped where she could, plan the interior, made decisions about windows and doors. Grace helped by playing in wood shavings and bringing them nails one at a time. By spring, the house was finished. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a real stove, a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Solid, built to last. They moved in on the first warm day of March. Grace ran through the rooms, declaring each one hers. Jonas built a fire in the new fireplace. Clara unpacked their few belongings. That night, after Grace was asleep in her new bedroom, Jonas and Clara sat on the porch watching stars. "Never thought I'd have this again," Jonas said quietly. "A home, a family." Clara leaned against him. "Neither did I. We should probably make it legal, the family part." Clara looked at him. "Are you asking me to marry me? If you want, or we can just keep doing what we're doing. Don't need a piece of paper to know I'm committed." "I want the paper," Clara said. "Want it official. Want Grace to know her parents chose each other." Jonas smiled. "Then I'm asking, Clara Ford, will you marry me?" "Yes, absolutely yes." They married in June. Reverend Sarah Morris rode up from Timber Ridge to perform the ceremony. A few neighbors came. Grace was flower girl, took her job extremely seriously. It was simple, no fancy dress, no big celebration, just 2 people who'd survived hell, promising to build heaven together. When Sarah pronounced them married, Jonas kissed Clara like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Grace made a face. "Yuck!" Everyone laughed. The years that followed were quiet in the best way. Clara and Jonas worked the land raised. Grace built a life that was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Grace grew into a bright, fierce child, smart like her mother, willful like both parents. She learned to read from Clara's small collection of books, learned to shoot and track from Jonas, learned right from wrong from the stories her mother told about fighting for truth. When Grace was 5, she asked about her father. Clara had been dreading this question, preparing for it. But nothing really prepared you for looking into your child's innocent eyes and explaining the darkest parts of your history. They sat on the porch, just the 2 of them. Jonas had taken himself on a long hunting trip, giving Clara space for this conversation. "Your father was a bad man," Clara said carefully. "He hurt me. But that's not your fault. You didn't choose him. And the good man who's been raising you, Jonas, he chose to be your father. That's what matters." Grace thought about this seriously. "Jonas is my real dad. In every way that counts, yes. And the bad man, he's gone. He can't hurt anyone anymore." Grace nodded, satisfied. "Good." She went back to playing. Never asked about Thomas Hale again. For Grace, Jonas was her father, and that was enough. On a day in late summer, Grace's 10th birthday, Jonas took Clara to the clearing where they'd built the new house years ago. "Got something for you." He handed her a wooden box. Inside was a carved sign. "The Riker family," it read. "Clara, Jonas, and Grace. Established 1876. Clara's eyes filled. "The Riker family. I like the sound of that." Jonas hung the sign by the front door. Official. Permanent. A declaration that this place, this family, this life was theirs. That evening they gathered on the porch. Clara, Jonas, Grace, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. Grace was teaching Jonas a song she'd learned. He pretended not to know it, let her correct him, made her laugh. Clara watched them and felt a peace so profound it was almost painful. She thought about the girl she'd been, the one standing on a wagon with a rope around her neck, certain she was about to die. She thought about the journey from there to here, the violence and fear and loss, but also the strength, the survival, the discovery that love could bloom even in the hardest ground. Jonas noticed her watching. "You all right?" Clara smiled. "More than all right. I'm home." He pulled her close. Grace climbed into her lap. They sat there as the sun set, 3 people who'd found each other against impossible odds and decided to stay. In Silver Falls, 100 miles south, the old church stood empty. The town had never recovered from the scandal. Most people had moved away. Those who remained never spoke of Thomas Hale or the corruption that had rotted their community from the inside. But occasionally, travelers passing through would stop at the cemetery, would see the grave marked simply Elias Reed, 1848 to 1876. He sought truth. Someone had planted wildflowers around the grave. They bloomed every year without fail. No one knew who tended them, but they kept growing. Clara stood on her porch one last time, looking out at the meadow. Grace was asleep inside. Jonas was checking the animals for the night. In her hand, Clara held a letter. She'd written it years ago, meant for Grace to read someday, when she was old enough to understand. The letter began, "My dear daughter, you were born in violence, but you were raised in peace." It ended, "Choose to be good, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's the only thing that matters." Clara folded the letter, put it in the box with Elias's compass, Sarah's Bible, the marriage certificates, all the pieces of her history. Someday Grace would read it, would understand the full weight of where she came from. But for now, she was just a child, running through meadows, laughing, free. And that was enough. That was everything. Jonas came back from the barn, saw Clara standing there, came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "Thinking?" he asked. "Remembering. Good memories or bad as both. Can't have one without the other." Jonas kissed the top of her head. True enough. They stood there together, watching stars emerge, listening to night sounds, breathing in the smell of home. Inside, Grace stirred in her sleep, murmured something, settled back down. Outside, the wildflowers had closed their petals for the night, waiting for morning, waiting to bloom again. Because that's what wildflowers do. They bloom, they rest, they bloom again. Persistent, unyielding, unkillable, just like truth, just like love, just like the women who refuse to stay buried no matter how hard the world tries to put them in the ground. Clara took Jonas's hand. "Let's go inside." "You tired?" "No, just want to be where my family is." They went in together, closed the door, locked it against the past. Inside was warmth. Inside was safety. Inside was the future they'd fought for and won. And when morning came, the wildflowers would be blooming again, covering the meadow, covering the scars, making something beautiful from hard ground, always. The end.